before starting, just 2 words to introduce myself. I'm Colonel Cruciano Cruciani. I'm in my current job position, I'm the coordinator of the Technical Secretariat of the Italian Anti-Fraud Coordination Service, set up at the Presidency of the Council of Ministers, in particular in the Department for European Affairs, which is the government's instruments in charge, among other things, obviously, of preparing and developing the national anti-fraud strategy, as well as the coordinating body for all national and regional administration carry out activities to prevent and fight fraud, corruption, and other illegal activities in detrimental to the Union's financial interests. So, first of all, I could say to you that our anti-fraud coordination service is not, I have to highlight it in crystal words, that our AFCOS is not an operational one. It's just a coordination body. You have to imagine it as a really wide round table in which sit all the authorities at central level, at regional level, that deal in our daily work job, that deal with the protection of the EU financial interests. Before starting with my presentation, and my main topic is represented by fraud risk indicators in the National Recovery and Resilience Plan, I would like to, just 2 minutes, to recap in few words my previous speech presented during the fruitful workshop held in Venice last month. In that occasion, I tried to identify, by making a sort of census, I tried to collect all the existing databases or used or better realized at national level, at the European level, in the specific field of the protection of the EU financial interests. And among them, as a real best practice, we are really proud of this, I showed the PFIT platform, which is an innovative business intelligence tool that fully complies with specific European regulatory provisions and several recommendations of the European Commission, made available to the administration involved in the various control processes, in particular to management authorities and audit authorities. This database, it's a platform basically, offer the opportunity to collect and organize in appropriate reports through a single query, also to a massive type, and applying multiple search parameters, all the main information that can be retrieved or gathered from a specific data set and that can be traced back to the beneficiaries of public funding of European origin, and also to the Recovery Resilience Plan. This data collection is carried out basically through heterogeneous external sources at national and European level, and aims to consolidate, strengthen the fight against fraud and other illegal activities to the detriment of the EU budget, acting as a complementary or additional support tool to the one already in use at European level, and its name is Arachne, and in general to any other tool able to implement the effectiveness and the fight against fraud, in particular also at the police level. This platform allows online queries and the generation of a reputational information sheet, a sort of report, as already mentioned, aimed at providing all national administration managing EU funds with a technological tool capable of intensify the exchange of information and therefore maximizing the delicate but fundamental phase of anti-fraud prevention, with the aim of centralizing and making visible all key information relating to beneficiaries and public funding of European origin and producing specific analysis outputs by querying a single computer system in an aggregated manner and without the need for several separate queries. I've chosen to emphasize PFIT among all the databases that I've showed in my previous presentation, basically for two main reasons. The first one, first of all, is represented because the database is the result of an in-depth demand analysis developed in partnership by COLAF, our committee, over the course of many EU co-funded projects over the years. I remember that we started in 2015 with the DNA project, that we moved towards the Cooperation Project 1 and the Cooperation Project 2, and now the FRED2 project, the ongoing FRED2 project, is the last one project developed in partnership by our committee. The second point is represented by the fact that PFIT project anticipated what will be the strategic orientation and development guidelines for IT tools requested in the form of recommendation by the European Commission itself. As a matter of fact, our country, we can consider that our country intercepted these needs in advance, thanks to the continuous confrontation with multiple national and European players, like we are doing today in this meeting, and so that's the reason why I consider PFIT really important. In the light of the above, I would like to try to address in the same way the issue of the development of specific risk indicators within our National Recovery Resilience Plan, at two main levels, at the European level, at the national level, to try to broaden the information panorama, to give you a general overview offered in Venice by, in particular, Colonel Pecoraro from Guardia di Finanza, with reference to the checklists drawn up by the special unit of protection of the EU financial interest of Guardia di Finanza, which will obviously not be dealt with today. This is in order to offer possible further elements of analysis, especially to academics and practitioners and to students, in the development of a possible path of anti-fraud tools with the Anti-Fraud Task Force of FRED2 project. Let's move to the next slide, please. Many thanks. Okay. In this slide, I would like to introduce my speech. It's essential to briefly and quickly mention the extractor and the current composition and the new competence of our committee, our National Anti-Fraud Coordination Service. The Italian National Anti-Fraud Strategy aims, in accordance with indication of the European Commission, to effectively and comprehensively oversee all the phases of the anti-fraud cycle. I mean, the prevention, the detection, the investigation, and the application of sanctions. And to do this purpose, relies on extremely articulated system of institutions, judicial and administrative authorities, police forces, agencies, and so on. You can see summarized in this slide the four main categories of authorities that currently take part in our committee. I mean, ministers, law enforcement agencies, regions, external control bodies, and so on. In the right side of this slide, there's a specific list of legal bases that regard the constitution of our committee. In fact, by law number 142 of 1992, this committee was cited in the Department for European Affairs in the Presidency of Council of Ministry, as already mentioned. So it's obvious that we are really proud of this, that we have more than 30 years of experience on the specific field of the protection of the EU financial interest. And among this list of laws, the decree law and so on, I would like to highlight the last one. I bring the decree law number 19 that was published on the 2nd March of 2024, because this is really important for us, because this decree law and obviously is pending in the conversion into law, obviously, but it's important for us because extended our tasks and duties to the National Recovery Resilience Plan and extended the number of members of our committee. Next slide, please. So, as a part of the new governance system of the cohesion policies at the National Recovery Resilience Plan, the Council of Ministers, with the approved decree law mentioned, offered a new perspective, new tasks and duties for our anti-fraud coordination service. In particular, I would like to draw your attention to the Article 3, paragraph 1 to 3 of this decree law in question, which, in order to strengthen the unitary strategy of preventing and fighting fraud on other illegal activities in the financing connecting to the National Recovery Resilience Plan, to the cohesion policies relating to the 2021-2027 programming cycle, and to the national funds relating to them, has extended also to the National Recovery Resilience Plan the functions already provided for the Italian AFCOS. The decree also explains the new composition of the committee, which will include, among others, representative of National Recovery Resilience Plan mission structure, the network of National Recovery Resilience Plan anti-fraud contact persons set up at the Ministry of the Economy and Finance. Let's move to the next slide, please. Okay, here a general overview of the extended composition of our AFCOS, with obviously Guardia di Finanza and Arma dei Carabinieri. Then we have Anti-Corruption Authority, Financial Intelligence Unit Authority, Court of Auditors, and so on. And in particular, the activities to be carried out by COLAF for the above-mentioned purposes, and among these, I would like to highlight those relating to the drafting of any proposal, including those of regulatory nature. As a part of the joint responsibility to protect the financial interests of the EU, which lies in the EU institutions and the member states, a central role is reserved for the fraud risk management process and as a necessary condition for preventing, detecting, and prosecuting wrongdoing detrimental to these interests. Next one, please. Okay, so let's start with the core of today's presentation, represented by risk indicators realized and published at EU level, at a national level. I would like to start with a brief presentation of the main fraud risk indicators published or realized at EU level by OLAF in the 34th annual report for the protection of the EU financial interest. We call it PIF report. The last one is for 2022. And in this document contains a general overview of the possible fraud risks related to the implementation of the recovery and resilience facility. So it's a sort of general idea offered to each member state for developing at the national level a specific or analytic risk indicators or red flag on this specific field. Next one, please. Okay, the document examines the subject matter from basically from three different perspectives, and basically represented by these three main pillars. I mean, the first one is represented by the nature, the complexity of the investment, the expected results, and the related indicators, and last but not least, the type of threats and enabling factors. Starting with the next slide, please. Starting with the first pillar represented by the nature and the complexity of the investment, for instance, we can say that the public tender for a major project for which the risks are separately indicated as set out below by the pre-tender phase, the tender stage, and after the tender. In the pre-tender phase, we can do some example, for instance, regarding undue restriction of information to potential bidders, undue recourse to accelerated and restricted procedures, undue exclusion or discouragement of potential bidders through excessive and discriminatory qualification requirements, or poor quality of tender documentation and specification, which may also more easily lead to changes in the contract during the performance. During the tender phase, we can do some examples, such as lack of transparency in the evaluation process, manipulation of bids after their submission, restricting sub-bidders to additional information, and in the post-tender phase, modification of contracts after award, shortcomings in performance, and so on. The second part is represented by selection and implementation of many projects selected through calls for proposal by one or more implemented bodies, which in turn don't have to use public procurement. In the selection phase, we can offer you these examples, such as low quality of calls for proposal, artificial attestation by recipients in the existence of eligibility criteria, and financial and organizational potential, substantial ineligibility of the project due to lack of requirement criteria, or submission of false documents to increase costs, or inadequate cost-benefit analysis, and so on. The last one is represented by the implementation. The implementation phase. In this part, non-compliance with contract obligations included on the basis of false and incomplete documents, or another example, fraudulent failure of the final recipients, inflating costs by means of false invoices, ineligibility of costs, and so on. The next step is represented by the framework contract for many decentralized projects, in which, through a public procurement procedure, a central body signs a framework contract with economic operators selected through calls for proposals, and subsequently downstream implementers purchase to works, to goods or services to be financed from which the risks are similar to those indicated for public procurement for a large project. The next step here is represented by many decentralized projects through public procurement, where the investment is carried out by several entities that have to apply public procurement procedures for works, supplies, or services located throughout the state, selected through calls for proposal, in respect of which similar risks to those described above arise, aggravated by the fact that the procurement procedures are managed by many contracting authorities, which may have different levels of administrative capacity and may be closer to the potential contractor. Financed through financial instrument, in which financial resources are allocated to a fund or instrument which provides grants, loans, or guarantees, establishing the types of project or recipients eligible for financing. The last one is represented by a granular financing without selection, where support is provided to all situations that meet certain requirements related to activities or the final recipients, and there is no prior selection of project, as may be the case, for instance, for tax credits or tax deductions for support to the digitalization or energy efficiency, for which the following risks are identified. Applicants may artificially create the condition to benefit from the incentive or may claim it in relation to activities that are not or not only partially covered by the intervention. Next slide, please. The second pillar, represented by the result, the expected result, and the related indicators, distinguish between a large centralized project implementation managed by the implemented body, in respect of which the risks are highlighted, that the target was not actually achieved, and the chain of recipients provided relevant information to assess the achievement of target incomplete, inaccurate, or false, fake, The second one is represented by the aggregation of many decentralized realizations or output, consisting of the achievement of results for several project and final recipients, under the management of one or more implemented bodies, for which the same risks as mentioned above exist, aggravated by the number of different projects involved and the number of the different bodies involved. The last one is represented by the aggregation without previous selection, consisting basically in taking into account the activities declared by private individuals or economic operators without an implemented body managing or monitoring the intervention, the selection eligibility project, and supervising their implementation. In this regard, risks similar to those described for the two previous types of implementation are reported, aggravated by the potentially huge number of operations involved. Next one, please. The third one is represented by the type of threat of enabling factors that can facilitate it, such as for corruption, highlights how it can be used to influence public procurement procedures, and above all, to obtain access to privileged information. With regard in particular to conflict of interest, emphasizes the document that it's an expression of the links and the relationships between officials and economic operator that can be easily be exploited for fraudulent purposes. And the last one, the collusion between beneficial owner and contractors. The document points out how it can fuel legal schemes, for instance, to inflate prices, to mask shortcomings in the implementation, or simulate competition. Next slide, please. Okay, regarding in particular to the threats, the document goes on to point out the risks related to the network of enterprises or companies, consisting of the use of link between companies, including shell companies for submitting multiple funding applications under the Recovery and Resilience Facility or the cohesion funds, controlling the project supply chain, in particular with obvious consequences with the term of transaction, reliable and potential cost inflation, concealing beneficial ownership, for instance, to allow public funding to benefit entities that should not have access to it, and last but not least, building up artificially long supply chain These products may be covered by certificates, for instance, attesting to required quality that are false, misleading, or issued by unauthorized bodies. Next slide, please. Really quickly, entities providing expertise identifiable in fraudulent companies that provide legal assistance to applicants for public funding or to final recipients in implement their project abusing tendering or selection procedures, setting up hidden networks or involving the same actor in multiple projects. Then we have collusive. In the next slide, we can see the collusive agreements between competitors. You can have a general idea in that in the right box. Let's move quickly to the next one. The next slide represented by fictitious documents and false declaration. In the box, we have an example of these cases. Obviously, the types of forgotten documents, forgotten documents depend on the type of project and the phase of the project in which they are used. They can be, for instance, invoices, transport documentation, contracts, guarantees, financial statements, operating capability statements, and so on. All of these documents are normally fake in this, and they are used frequently, in particular in irregularities or frauds in the detriment to the EU budget. Last but not least, the organized crime. The last slide, please. Okay, organized crime. On this point, the document refers in particular in a very general way to the tendency organized crime groups to defraud public funds by submitting application for subsidies or bids in tenders, including through corrupt conduct, especially in the energy, construction, IT, and waste of management sectors. The main let's move to the national. Let's move quickly to the national level, because recently at national level we have developed two main risk indicators. The first one that you can see in the left side of this slide is represented by the checklist presented in the previous meeting by the Colonel of Guardia di Finanza, Andrea Pecoraro. And so I skip this presentation because it was deeply analyzed by my colleagues. In particular, these checklists, the checklist supporting the fraud risk assessment activity in the National Recovery and Resilience Plan, and it was prepared, as already mentioned, by the Special Unit for Public Expenditure and Repression of Community Fraud of Guardia di Finanza, and constitute a summary, a sort of recap and descriptive framework of the main fraud risk indexes developed mainly on the basis of the investigative experience of Guardia di Finanza, so military force, aimed at guiding the initial assessment of central administration and the implementing parties as to the abstract possibility of irregularities in the use of financial resources of the plan. The next one is represented by the specific risk indicator developed in Italy recently by our FIU, Financial Intelligence Unit of Bank of Italy, and they are really interesting. I don't have time to deeply analyze this kind of the document. It's because time is really short, and I have to move quickly to the end of my presentation. But I'll leave you, all of you, or share with you this PPT presentation, because there's a list specific analysis of these risk indicators. questions. Just to please skip quickly this slide and move to the last one, because I would like to say in conclusion the need for efficient anti-fraud governance in each EU state with the best knowledge and suitable equipment structure to ensure cooperation and coordination between all the components relevant to the protection of the EU financial interests has been repeatedly emphasized, including by the European institutions themselves. It is therefore self-evident that functional indexes for assessing the risk of fraud related to National Recovery Resilience Plan can be borrowed basically for the most part from those adopted so far in the analysis paths identified in the fight against fraud perpetrated in the area of structural funds and European investment, and can be a really practical tool to guide and assist public administration in identifying potential anomalies, or to have a sort of help with red flags in the accounts of beneficiaries of European resources. So that's all for me with my presentation. I would like just to, my presentation, it was just to offer you a general idea with an additional, to give you additional information following the practical exercises that Professor Arezzo started in Venice workshop. So that's all for me. I'm here for any kind of question, and the floor is back to the chair. Thank you, thank you for your attention. Okay, Professor Bellini is not here with us, so I'll try to close this morning session, saying thank you to all of you, in particular to all of you students that participated so numerous to this workshop. And after the lunch break session, we'll be back for the afternoon session with Professor Arezzo and other participants for a very more concrete session dedicated in particular in the development of the network of our network and the specific tool in order to help also practitioners and academics in finding important tools for the protection of the EU financial interests. Many thanks for the participation, and let's see after the break.